Welcome everybody to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we're going to be continuing Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Star of Hope, Part 4. But as always, before we get into today's video, if you like this and more of the content on the channel that you see, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Stay tuned and make sure you watch that community tab like a hawk, because you never know when some information or updates are going to be coming out now or in the future. And also make sure you check out any other of today's videos or any of the other comments and videos and playlists that we have down below as well. But anyway, we're not going to stick here for too long. Let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. For the 5 Rangers, they all excelled in different aspects of training. This was quickly picked up upon by Jason, as well as the other members of NERV headquarters. Each Ranger had their own unique aptitude, something that they were strong at above the others. Of course, as a team, they seemed to work cohesive enough, although it could be better. While Gendo Ikari allowed for the Rangers to operate as themselves, it was made very clear that the Rangers would work in tandem with the Eva. After all of the time and manpower and resources that had gone into creating the Evangelion couldn't simply be brushed to the side in form of a new shiny toy, as the members of the Magi put it, although they themselves recognized the power of the Zords, as well as the threat of the Machine Empire and its generals, now being classified as a top secret among the world powers, knowing now that they were fighting a war on 2 fronts, against the machines and the angels. For each of the Rangers, the parts where they excelled at truly showed how extraordinary they could be. When it came to Shinji and Asuka, the two worked great as pilots for the Zords, more so than anyone else in that regard. Shinji and Asuka seemed to match one another when it came to their Zord piloting practice. Shinji in the air with the Phoenix Zord, and Asuka on the ground with the Range Rover Towering Battle Zord, or what would be referred to as the left leg. As for the others, they each excelled in their own regards. When it came to Kensuke, he excelled as being a marksman and a shooter. His blasting skills, whether in the Zord or in hand-to-hand combat, were second to none. He was a great long-range fighter as the Blue Ranger. Toji excelled in hand-to-hand combat, as well as in the fighting aspects of the Megazord, being able to command it with such ease and authority. When it came to Rei seemed to be an anomaly above all the others. Of course, she wasn't bad at anything in particular, but rather she was a jack of all trades. Rei could step in and fill any position if need be, whether it be combat or piloting, shooting, swordplay, hand-to-hand combat training. She seemed to be an expert in all fields, or rather she was a quick study, almost able to pick things up on the first try, just being able to see it once. She kept them all on their toes, so to speak, as it seemed as though she got through everything flawlessly. Asuka took this to heart the most, the Pink Ranger of the team, being envious of Yellow. Often the two would train and spar together one-on-one, with Rei just narrowly beating her out every which way. However, despite all of that, Jason could see that the team were improving and progressing nicely. He had taken to being a bit more stricter in his training, especially after Shinji had nearly been killed fighting against General Blue. Knowing full well the dangers of the Machine Empire, he knew that he couldn't take their training lightly. Of course, they felt as though they were being run down into the ground more than they could handle, but all the same, it was only going to be but a matter of time. The Rangers have had to deal with plenty of obstacles, one event being when an angel attacked NERV headquarters and the power grid, and thus the group had to work together to get their way back inside. Thankfully, the Zords didn't run on any of the main grid power, so they were functional enough, more so than the Evas in this case. After all of the mishaps and everything that happened, the group were finally getting ready for some time for R&R, as the school was planning a trip to Okinawa, as they would be going to a beachside for a bit of a field trip, or just a way for the kids to relax. Asuka had gotten the new swimsuit, and she was more excited than any of them to finally leave and do something normal for once. Although sadly, she wouldn't get the chance as Misato would break the news to everyone. "Are you serious? You mean to tell me we can't go on the trip?" Asuka would say, with a pout forming across her lips. "Yep, that's exactly what I'm telling you, kiddo. You see, as members of NERV, as well as being Rangers, you're basically the world's only line of defense against the Cogs and the Angels, so we can't really afford to have you guys just going off willy-nilly like that." This is so unfair. Shinji, aren't you gonna do anything about this? What am I supposed to do? What, you just already accepted that we couldn't go? Well, I mean, it makes the most sense, Asuka. I doubt we were really going to get a chance to leave in the first place. So you're just going to give up without a fight? That's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't know how anyone can ever put up with a boy who's so whipped all the time. Hey, there's no need to call me that. I'm not whipped, I'm just... Alright, guys. I know this can be pretty difficult, but I'm pretty sure there's something you guys can do here. Misato, isn't there, a place where the kids can, be kids? Not too far, so that they can be on call in case anything happens. Well, Jason, there is one place. NERV does have its own private swimming pool, so they're free to use that. They do have the clearance. Wait, really? Shinji would ask, not even sure of everything NERV had to offer, as he didn't really spend too much time at headquarters outside of work-related business. NERV has a lot of recreational places for you guys to relax and hang out. You guys are free to use the pool, but only after you finish your homework. The kids would look up excitedly, as they felt as though they would get a chance to finally do something normal for once. Kensuke and Toji would also be met with the same news as well as Rei, and while they were a bit bummed out as well, the idea of having their own private swimming pool, along with food that they could have ordered over there, seemed more than well enough for them. Jason decided to take things slow and simple, just resting out in a private area with Misato, the two enjoying some drinks as they looked out at the nice view of the city, having some private adult time. While the kids were enjoying the pool with one another, Shinji was wrapping up some of his own homework, a little bit of science that he hadn't finished when Asuka would approach him. Shinji couldn't help but notice that Asuka actually did look pretty cute in that swimsuit, although he wasn't going to say it out loud, that was for sure. Asuka would tease him a bit as she always did, not really giving too much mind to the other boys who would be drooling at every which way. Kensuke having his camera broken multiple times whenever it seemed to get a little too close for comfort, at least in Asuka's case. And Rei simply didn't pay them much mind, although she would give Shinji a glare here and there, as she would swim her laps up and down in the pool. Toji in the meantime would goof off with Kensuke, the two blasting each other with water guns and just running around and having a good old time. while Shinji and Asuka, after a while of just going back and forth, would just sit down and watch everyone else. Shinji could notice that Asuka was struggling a little, and he would ask her what her problem was when it came to doing the homework. She seemed smart enough, it just seemed as though there were some things she was losing, as if there was a loss in translation. Asuka would explain that as she hadn't completely learned all of the kanji for Japanese, it was a little hard to read at times, thus why she could never fully grasp the understanding of some of the questions when it came to tests and homework. Now understanding what she was going through, Shinji would take the time to show her what the kanjis meant, going through them one at a time, and the two of them starting to learn from one another. Asuka would thank Shinji, noting that he wasn't too bad for a common folk, and Shinji tried his best to take the compliment any way that he could. Not too long after, though, NERV in the meantime would have a new discovery on their hands, that being an angel that had been crystallized and fossilized, now dwelling in the depths of a volcano. This was major news for the Magi and for the world at large. The chance to study an undamaged angel was a rare opportunity, but also a dangerous one. If not handled carefully, a rampaging angel, the A-17, would be something that maybe even the Zords couldn't handle. It was already estimated that the Evangelion would have a difficult time killing it if it fully awoke, and the world governments were not too keen on releasing an angel out just for the opportunity to study it, believing that it would be an even wiser action to simply kill it once and for all. Gendo Ikari understood the situation at hand. However, all the same, he knew what needed to be done. As such, he would get the permission, and the operation would begin for the extraction of A-17. NERV would get the news, and Misato would get to work in preparation. The Zords would be shipped out along with the Evangelion immediately, as the stage would be set for the retrieval of the A-17. Asuka would go inside of Unit 2, having a magma-resistant suit placed around it. It would be placed within the dwells of the volcano, allowing it with its claw grabber to pull out the angel safely, without damaging the crystal hide that was used to keep it sealed away. The other Rangers would be on standby in their respective Zords, and Pyramidas, now at 100%, was also being shipped out, along with the United States and Japanese Air Forces, with specialized missiles made and ready to launch in case anything went wrong. It was made very clear to everyone that if anything should go wrong, the safety of the world would be placed over their own lives, and the entire area would be bombarded with the missiles immediately, regardless to whoever was close, and they would all be seen as collateral damage. This would make everyone feel less than enthusiastic about the mission, but they went through it all the same. Asuka would be the pilot and would go down inside of the volcano with her magma-resistant suit, although it would only work to a certain extent. However, it should be enough to get the angel in and out. In the meantime, the other Rangers would be on standby around the island's area, as well as close to the city in case anything were to happen. Shinji would be standing beside Jason. They watched from the side of the volcano as Asuka went inside. Even though she was inside of Eva Unit 2, she was also morphed into her Pink Ranger form to serve as an extra layer of protection. Zero Ranger 1 would nod her head as she looked out towards the window, waving towards Shinji and speaking to him through her communicator, making sure that he would get a good look as she would perfectly execute the mission, showing exactly why she was the best of all of the Rangers, and also making sure she got a sly comment in on Rei as well, although even though they couldn't see it through her visor, Rei's expression was still as lifeless as always, as she truly didn't care what Asuka thought. As the operation began, Kaji would be walking not too far away, as he along with one of his associates were speaking about the operation in Rim. thing that they needed to be doing, knowing full well the dangers that would come with potentially unleashing an unseen angel, not knowing if they would have enough manpower to fight it. However, Kaji would simply shrug his shoulders, knowing full well that, in the end, there was no stopping Misato once she had her mind set on doing something, and in the end, the only thing they could do was hope. As the group waited, everything seemed to be going fine. Jason would put his hands on Shinji's shoulder, as he could feel his young student was shaking a bit in anxiety. "You okay, Shinji?" Jason would ask, as the gold and the red Zeo Ranger watched on as the operation unfolded. "Yeah, I'm fine. It's just... You're worried about her, aren't you?" No, it's just, well, she's my teammate now, so... I mean, aren't we supposed to look out for one another?" "Damn straight you're supposed to. That's what being a ranger is all about. You always watch out for your comrades." As the operation continued, despite some of the pressure being built upon on Eva Unit 2, she would still persist as Asuka would move lower and lower through the magma, the pressure building as a few of the cooling tanks would start to crack a little, although the operation would still continue on as normal. However, in that exact moment, an alert would flash across NERV's screens, as they could see that the cogs were now starting to attack in the lower district of the city. Shinji and Jason would already look to see that the other rangers were moving to respond. Rei, Toji, and Kinsuke, along with a few members of the NERV fighting force, would go to engage against the machine armada. Shinji and Jason would still be told to stay back, not knowing if anyone was going to launch an attack on Asuka while she was still in the middle of the operation, and that they couldn't afford for all of the rangers to leave. Jason and Shinji would tell the others to be safe, and that if they could take care of it quickly, then they would be there as soon as possible. The others would nod their head in agreement, as Kinsuke, Rei, and Toji would head out into the city to do battle with the cogs. In the meantime, the Red and Gold Ranger would stand on the side of the mountain, their weapons at their side, ready in case anything were to happen. Almost as if on cue, more cogs would arrive, starting to surround the two as Misato was now becoming nervous. She would still persist with the mission, leaving it in Jason and Shinji's hands. "What the? Master! We're being surrounded!" "Yeah, I can see that. So it looks like the cogs are attacking on both sides. Was this a setup? What are they after?" "Come on, Shinji. We know what they're after. They divided us so they could get their hands on that angel." "Oh no. Shinji, I know what you're thinking, but you need to stay focused right now. Asuka and Misato can take care of themselves just fine. Our goal is to work on defeating the cogs and making sure that nothing happens. If we keep them safe, everything will be fine." Keep them safe? Bold words, Gold Ranger. What the? But it'll take a lot more than just words to defeat us. General Blue! It seems you have recovered, Red Ranger, from our last battle. That is good. Hopefully, you will provide me a better challenge than before. We'll be taking whatever's in that volcano off of your hands now. And you think I'm just gonna let you do so that easily? Well, it's not as if you have a choice, Gold Ranger. Not only will we be taking the angel, but I'll be taking your morphers as well. Now, are you going to hand them over quietly and step aside? Or will you die here and now? Shinji would pull out his power sword, Jason along with the golden staff. As the two stood back to back, they would face off against the Cogs. Shinji improving in his battling and in his fighting skills, his sword blocking away most of the sabers and the blasters of the Cogs as he slashed through and destroyed them all in quick succession. Jason, using his enhanced speed, would move around like a golden blur, slicing off the robots' heads in quick succession. Eventually the Cogs would be defeated, until now the only one that remained was General Blue, as he pulled his dark sword. He would stand between the two of them, Jason to his left and Shinji to his right, as he put one hand behind his back and raised his saber into the air. Now, let the dance begin. Jason would charge in first, asking for Shinji to cover his blind spot. Shinji would do as instructed, as the two would engage in the 2-on-1 fight against the General. General Blue proved to be far more advanced than just the mere fighting mechanics of the Cogs, his swordplay almost being second to none amongst many of the 5 generals. He was able to block all of Jason's attacks, as well as keeping his blind spot protected from Shinji. Shinji was just barely able to react, and the general saw this, taking advantage whenever he could, forcing Jason to play on the defense, to not only protect himself, but to protect Shinji as well. Asuka understood what was happening above her. She knew full well that Shinji was fighting that man again. No, that machine. Or monster. The person that hurt Shinji in the first place. She was starting to become unfocused for a moment before Misato would tell her to stay in the head of the game. To stay focused on the mission at hand and to let Shinji and Jason worry about General Blue, and that they would protect her. Asuka would take a deep breath before focusing in on her objective, as she would use the claw marks that had been set into the Eva. She would place a firm hold on both sides of the crystallized angel. Now successfully snagged, they would begin the operation to immediately pull the angel back up. However, they made sure to do it slowly, as to allow Shinji and Jason enough time to face off with General Blue. The two Rangers kept the General preoccupied, moving the fight as far away from the main volcano as they could, hoping that if they could keep him pushed away just long enough, then they could force him into an area where they could have the advantage. Shinji would stay behind Jason, getting in whatever shots he could in the fight. However, the General would still block him with ease. So it seems you've gotten a lot better since the last time we fought, Red Ranger. Yeah, and no thanks to you. It doesn't matter though. You humans are all the same. And just what do you know about humans? Jason would yell, going in for an attack from behind, only for the General to dodge once again. Shinji, using that split second, would duck lower before extending out his blade, hoping to strike him in a vital spot. However, the General, at the last moment, would block his sword with the tip of his own, moving the two to the side and forcing them opposite directions of one another, before getting back into his stance to continue on in the fray. Well, you humans are predictable. You think that every time you get a little closer, you think that you'll get smarter, that you'll get better, that you'll get faster. But that's far from the case. You are nothing more but flesh and bone. You will wither away and crumble under the pressure as you always do. In the end, I will always be your superior, and you are only meant to kneel before me. The General would extend his blade towards Jason, only to switch at the last moment and swipe towards Shinji. Shinji would just barely be able to dodge, lifting up the hilt of his sword at the last moment to take the brunt of the attack, as he was knocked down yet again. Jason would continue his clash with General Blue, a blur of dark blue and a blur of streaking gold, flashing and moving all across the volcano's mountainous side. It was almost too much speed for Shinji to even contend with. He couldn't tell where the general ended and where Jason began. It was as if they were in a dance of violence in and of itself. This was a level of fighting that Shinji had never seen before. However, as quickly as the fight had picked up speed, the speed was slowly starting to decrease, mostly on Jason's end, as sadly, he could not use the advanced speed of the Gold Ranger for too long, as his body was not fully compatible with the Gold Ranger power. While he could use it in small bursts, he could not ever get the fullest extent of the power, unlike how Trey of Triforia could. As his speed slowly started to dwindle, General Blue picked up on this, getting in a few more hits than Jason did, forcing him to the ground a few times. As predicted, you are human, and that is what makes you weak, Jason. You were foolish enough to try to fight us all of those years ago, and now look at what it has done to you. You would have been wise to serve Lord Draken. And just what makes him so different from me? It is quite simple. You are but a human. Lord Draken is a god. And gods shall never be defeated. Before the general even had time to react, he would feel a sword plunged into his lower abdomen, sparks beginning to fly from the side as he looked down to see the blade coming from behind his back, seeing that Shinji was now behind him. And that's for the last time. Shinji twisted the blade into the lower robotic abdomen of General Blue, before the general would use his left hand to backhand Shinji in the face, knocking him down the lower cliff side of the mountain. As the general pulled the sword from out of him, he would turn after kicking Jason to the ground, turning his full attention towards Shinji. Shinji now at the lower ground, and the general on the high ground. The general would point his sword towards the Red Ranger, looking to finish what he had started not too long ago. The general would move down the side of the volcano at blinding speeds. This time he was going to take his head off completely. Shinji, however, had just a split second to react. He had seen the two of them fighting at full speed for the briefest of moments. He believed that he could match that speed. Even if it wasn't long, he just had to match it long enough to win. As the general came hurling towards him, he could tell that the general was not moving as fast as he originally was. It must have been from that critical attack that Shinji had dealt him while he was reveling in his victory. As the general was now slowing in speed just enough, something began to course through his veins. A spark, a crackling of red energy formed around him. Shinji took a deep breath and waited, as the general then became closer towards him. Shinji would quickly backflip. Kicking his legs into the air, he would knock the blade out of General Blue's hands. The blade going straight up, the general was surprised that Shinji was able to time his speed just right. The general had to use all of the mechanics within his body to slow himself down. However, as he did so, he had now lost the advantage that he had, with Shinji now holding the high ground and the blade now falling back down towards them. As the general turned to face Shinji, Shinji would take the blade that had now fallen from the sky into his hands. He would slash in a single motion across the general's chest, cutting him open and exposing his wires and circuitry. The general would clutch on to his exposed chest, as most of the mechanics the wires, and everything holding it in place was now starting to shoot out. With the general now caught and stunned, Shinji would then pull his blaster from his holster. Remembering what he had learned from Kensuke, he would aim for just off-center, making sure that he would shoot just true. The blasters would then start to shoot in the exposed circuitry of the general. 3 well-placed shots and the general started to go up in flames. Before falling down, the general would be stunned, yelling in agony and defeat, as he had been outclassed by the Red Ranger. For a machine, it had given in to its own hubris, and that was its downfall. In the wake of the attack, there was another situation happening with Asuka. The angel had now started to awaken from its crystallized state. The mission had to be abandoned immediately, and as such, it was under direct orders for it to be put down. However, due to Asuka being in the magma-resistant suit, no weapons were equipped with her. Without hesitating, Shinji would race over to Eva Unit 1. Getting inside of the entry pod, he would activate his Eva immediately and pull out the knife that he kept in its holster. Angling down, he would drop it over to Asuka immediately. Asuka would take the blade and stab the angel in the head. A clean, solid kill, destroying the problem before the situation got out of hand. However, in the process, the cable wires that were used to keep Eva Unit 2 in the magma began to break away and disintegrate, until eventually the cable snapped completely. Asuka would slowly begin to drift lower into the pressurized magma, resigning herself to the fate that she might potentially be destroyed. However, before that could come to pass, she would find herself being jolted in hell. As she looked up, she could see that it was Eva Unit 1, smiling as she could see that Shinji had saved her just in time. Under her breath, and while no one could see her expression under her helmet, she would give a faint smile, calling him a stupid idiot, before he helped pull her back to the surface. Jason would remark that he was impressed with how Shinji was able to handle himself, and he was proud to see how all of his students were improving. Asuka would take the most pleasure with being complimented by Jason, bragging as she always did, and everyone would simply laugh it off as Misato decided to treat everyone to sushi and a night at the public hot springs. Of course, the sides were divided with the boys and the girls, Toji and Kensuke having to be held in check as Jason had to keep them from doing anything that would be inappropriate. As they enjoyed themselves in the evening, Asuka and Misato would both have a bit of their own clarity. While the women were enjoying themselves in the bath, Asuka would see the scar on Misato's lower abdomen. She would be curious and ask her what had happened, and Misato, with a soft smile, but one hinting regret, would tell that it was a scar that came from the events of the second impact, 15 years ago. Asuka would ask her if she knew about her past. Misato would confirm that, as the leader of NERV's military defense, she had information on all of the Rangers that worked under her. However, before they could become solemn, Misato would tell her to cheer up. Even if they did have a crappy past, their lives weren't completely bad now. After all, they had now come to make new friends along the way, like each other, and like the other Rangers. And in the end, those new friends were able to fill in some of the holes that their past had left them. And in the end, what more could you really ask for? Asuka would nod her head in agreement as they looked up into the night sky. For each of them, their lives had been filled with something they weren't really expecting. For Misato, in her briefest of moments, she would find herself thinking of Jason for whatever reason. And for Asuka, there was only one person that came to her mind at that moment. His name was Shinji Ikari. This concludes Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Star of Hope, based on Heroes of the Morphin Grid, Part 4. But as always, if you enjoyed today's video and anything else on PowerCore Productions, then don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can always stay up to date whenever content drops now or in the future. Stay tuned for the rest of this week's videos, as we'll be doing uploads tomorrow and on Friday as well. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.